Okay, welcome to Desertification Island Discs Volume 4. And today I'm joined by John Bromley, who's Head of Clean Energy and Strategy at Legal & General. Hi, John. How are you doing?
Hi, how you doing? Great to see you, Dan.
Yeah, good. Thanks for joining us today, John. First of all, it's a real pleasure, I think, from my perspective, to speak to somebody whose career and kind of professional life is really centered on sustainability and sustainable development. And I can kind of really relate to that. And I guess I was just wondering when it first hit you, or when you decided that this was the way forward for you, sustainability. Did you know it was sustainability at the time, or tell us a bit about that? How did you get into it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the point at which I knew it was sustainability, sort of from a career and sort of purpose perspective, came a little bit later. A few things kind of came together when I was at university, but really kind of my core interest in, like many kids, I think growing up, you see a lot of kids very interested in sort of nature and sort of the physical world around them. So I was always always kind of really interested in all that kind of volcanoes and earthquakes. I found all of that very exciting. Thunderstorms I found really exciting, not scary, which that always fascinated me. But I think look, the real moment for me was arriving at university, and if I'm honest, it was sort of I wasn't the best sort of attendance at lectures in my first year, but it was there was nothing else to do, and I dragged myself to the library one day, and I was kind of looking along the shelves, and I saw the kind of the spine of this book, and it said Our Common Future, and I thought, that looks quite interesting. It's an interesting title to find in the library. So I pulled this book off, and for many people sort of listening, and for yourself, you'll know what I was taking off the shelf. It was the Brundtland Report, and I just thought it was amazing. I mean, I read it cover to cover, and what I think it did was, for me, it kind of brought together a whole load of strands of things that I was interested in, I was quite passionate about, and its kind of environment. It was kind of people, social challenges, political challenges. These were all things that kind of had, they meant a lot to me. And it just kind of crystallized it. And of course, that was the definition given to sustainable development. I realized I'd come to that document 5 or 6 years at least late. But it was amazing. And then, to look around the world, and sort of see some of the things that were starting to form around Kyoto, and it was quite a hopeful time, and I thought, we really have a great opportunity here. World's coming together. People seem to understand what these issues are, and it was a time when we were all excited about amazing, isn't it? 20, 30 years ago, the technology. Look at the possibilities. So I think some fantastic parallels, of that moment in time, and moments that we see now. But that one document and that definition just brought together a whole load of things for me, and that's all I could think about from that point on.
Absolutely, it's the same, because you studied at Nottingham University as well, didn't you? Like myself, we didn't around the same time as well, quite bizarrely. I was thinking back to like Nottingham University campus back then, the kind of late 90s and early 2000s, and
Giving our age
it wasn't
away.
like. It wasn't like, well, I'm 21 really, but, it wasn't like that. We do a lot of work with universities, and there's a real kind of often aggressive sustainability agenda campaign, education going on around, like very visible, about energy or waste, recycling. That wasn't there. I remember my course on some of the things I was learning about were digging holes in the ground called landfills. Really, it was that, and I was kind of thinking back to what was. One of the pivotal moments for me was doing an environmental law masters, because that made me understand. In my mind, it was the Rio Declaration. That was the one that kind of sunk in from that progression. But was things like Waste Strategy 2000. It's like there wasn't a national waste strategy until the 2000s. Landfills weren't lined in the kind of 80s or whatever. It's just frightening, kind of, that this isn't actually that long ago, is it? That maybe this has started, and maybe we were very early adopters, because I had 4 people on my course in at Nottingham University in environmental technology. I bet it's not 4 anymore. So it's changed, hasn't it, so much?
Really interesting time, and as you said, I think that's what I find really exciting looking around, the picture today, and sort of what the young people, people at university, what they're focused on. As you said, I sort of, when I was in a cohort, we're studying geography. I was in the group of the kind of the physical science stream of that degree at Nottingham, and it was a great place because you could sort of pick and choose across the social sciences side or into the sort of more physical science side, which you can see for me kind of brought together a lot of these different aspects around sustainable development. But to your point, the milk round, the job fairs, all of those things, very hard to find anything remotely related to the environment or climate directly. Lots of finance and consulting type roles. So that, I think that's changing quite a bit because people are looking for purpose as well, and they want to make a difference. And actually, I'm very fortunate now to work with and see some of the kind of leading technology companies trying to solve the climate problems and come up with solutions. And there you meet young founders, quite often people out of university, PhD students, and they're applying their mind and their capability and their skill to solving a problem. And so I'm really excited about that because people are actively choosing, I want to apply my skill, invent something amazing. I'm sure you can get many of, you will have financial rewards from solving some of these problems. And at the same time, you feel that you're part of providing a solution. And I think that's a great sort of opportunity bringing all those together. But, as you said, it wasn't obvious to me when I was in my degree. It seemed like, the finance and the city, or, kind of what else?
Yeah. Yeah. Which one of the management consulting schemes shall I join? Which one of at my time, it was always like the £30,000 a year job kind of was the thing that was on the table with the big management consulting firms. And you go for that, or for mine was like, do I become a lawyer? That was the other kind of temptation. But yeah, so what did you end up getting into then? Like, so you studied, you've realised now, you found the Brundtland report, you're sold on sustainable development as the way forward. What's the first kind of job that you get into from there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that happened was sort of towards the end of my degree, part of my dissertation work. I was really lucky because at Nottingham, had sort of a couple of the leading sort of hydrology and river systems professors, probably actually globally renowned and still renowned now. And I was very fortunate to be, in a group with them. And actually I went out, that they sort of helped facilitate, and I went out to the US. I worked for the sort of hydrological research unit out there, and we did some survey work on the Mississippi and the Missouri rivers. So, an amazing, a life-changing experience when you go walking the banks of these rivers. And basically the study that the US government was actually funding was kind of aimed at trying to understand how some of the catastrophic flood events that had taken place, in the late 90s, what had gone wrong with the flood defences, what was happening, why were these floods happening, pretty significant damage caused. And you're kind of busy researching this, and that's probably the first time I started to piece together, it's climate change. We can talk about why it rains so hard and what the impact was on the river channel, and why why the kind of defense systems didn't quite work on that occasion with those particular flows and hydraulics. But actually, I was stepping back and saying, but this is all well and good. We can keep pouring concrete and trying to find other ways around it. But the fundamental thing is, why were these unusual, significant rain events happening, and that sort of took me to a wider thought piece around climate change. And coming to your question, this was the whole thing. It was so hands-on, surveying riverbanks, walking up and down those riverbanks, kind of taking measurements, and then coming back to the lab. I kind of really liked that kind of hands-on element, as well as the sort of academic, scientific, work it out element. And for me, I've always needed to combine those two things. And so, when I came to the end of my degree, there were some various kind of opportunities that we've already discussed. But the one that excited me the most was, I was offered a place on a graduate scheme with Anglian Water, one of the water companies. And that offered the opportunity to spend 6-month placements, beginning actually for the first year or year and a half, working out on the water treatment side and the plants, and then switching and working on the sewage treatment and the kind of biosolids end, and then also a bit of kind of networks management. And quite a bit of that time was in an overall. There were times when I thought, in my blue overall, with a team of guys pumping sewage poo basically out of somebody's front garden, where I sort of there were times when I thought, what am I doing? but look, that's the nexus. That's where society, human health, essential needs of everybody, but actually a direct and relatable impact on our environment. Both using a resource from it, putting back a waste stream into it. What do we do about that? And how do we do all of that in a way whilst making sure that basic human needs are met in a kind of safe and a good way? So it was a great sort of practical, hands-on opportunity to get involved and earn some money, start making a career, but actually be involved in the environment in a kind of key issue.
Absolutely. I think that's so important to kind of anyone that's looking to start a career in sustainability, is that ground level. I'd go as far as say the environmental management coalface, because a lot of the things now, that the obsession I see, and it'd be really interesting to hear this as an investor perspective, is a huge obsession with reporting and not necessarily asking why it's like it is or how it can be better. And to understand some of these issues, you need to understand how it operates on the ground level. I couldn't just go, those waste figures look right, if I hadn't been to a landfill, if I hadn't been to a transfer station. Or I couldn't tell you how contaminated that land is without having undertaken some drilling or sampling, or those types of things are so imperative, and you can't jump over that and expect to understand these really complicated things. So I think it's really important that where people can, if you're at university, it'd be interesting to see what you think of this. I think look at that opportunity to do sandwich type courses and experience kind of at that level, because that's what really opens your mind to some of these issues firsthand, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I very much agree with that. And I think you're right to sort of point to sort of data if you kind of go all the way through what you've said there. I think something that's really different about climate change, it's not totally different, but what I mean is to really kind of grapple with climate change and some of the things that we want to and we need to do as a society. We kind of need to form new networks, and we need to bring together knowledge sets and kind of skills and disciplines, financial, academic, scientific. There's a whole range of things that need to come together and start to talk to each other in a way that they might not have done before around a topic that is not always fully understood from the different perspectives. And the exciting thing, I think, if I was at university, and when I speak to undergraduates today, occasionally, who sort of say, I'm really interested, how do I sort of build my career in this space, and where do I start? I think what's really changed is that there is not a profession, and there is not sort of a role or a job or a company or a business, if we're going to do anything about this challenge, that does not need to engage in this agenda in some way. And that means you can make a difference no matter what your skill set or your particular sort of interest is. you can bring that with the purpose, and you will be able to make a difference. And I think, that's it's a very good thing in some ways about net zero. It's genuinely means there's nowhere to hide. Everyone's in it, every sector. It's not, well, it's you guys and not me. It's kind of everybody's got to do something. And I think that, that's kind of a way in which individuals actually working in any company that feel passionate or have a purpose around this can make a difference.
Absolutely. Just arming people with the knowledge to be able to do it and understand, isn't it? These very broad subjects. But the most important thing is that, I think you said that if you've got the purpose and the drive and the commitment to do this, we don't need to, we're inspired by those books of the 70s and the historic conventions of the 90s because they still stand today. We're ahead of their time. But now there's many more people thinking about this subject, and we can work out our own solutions, to these thematic kind of strategies. So just apply the technology and encourage that and nurture that. That's what we've got to do. And I guess this would be good point to talk about, maybe the role of the investor in this. And we kind of see and read about the focus on SRI, socially responsible investment, and how much that's growing. What's your view on that? Is that for real, or is that creative investing and marketing to some extent?
I'm smiling because I think that, I could put it, I'll give you this perspective, probably for a good 15, 20 years of my career, sort of being involved in and trying to sort of move and work with sort of investors and sort of financial solutions to finance renewables or sort of waste recycling, etc. It's hard. A lot of it's been hard work. It's trying to put frameworks around things. It's how is it financed? Where's the returns? All of these are sensible questions. Now, fundamentally, the investors need to be able to demonstrate that you've got a sustainable business model, and that means that people, capital will continue to flow to find these solutions because it realizes that actually there is a return, there's a fair return to be made there. In my view, there's something we can discuss, a whole other topic around fairness of returns, but there's a return, there's a right risk and return profile. And we can bring capital to bear to sort of make some of these solutions happen. And I think in 15 or 20 years that have passed in my career, it was almost kind of like what part of the problem was if you start from the perspective of saying, because we need to invest here, because we need to do something about climate change. We've covered it in our conversation already, but that's not the language and that's not the way that you have to think if you're in charge of sort of investing and protecting people's wealth and trying to sort of grow that wealth. And that could be to provide pensions or public services or many of the things that then we sort of say, well, actually, you follow the cycle round. This does need to be sustainable. So I didn't used to start with talking about climate change because that's a big challenge, and instead sort of actually just say there are many other beneficial outcomes that we will find from sort of improving our environment or doing things in a more environmentally conscious way. I think that's one point, and I think the other point is that it's now the acceptance or the acknowledgement that at some point there is a price to pay for these externalized, the costs of carbon that have not been properly sort of factored in the past, but that there is a cost to that. And at some point somewhere, our systems have to work out how are we going to deal with this. And so, these are just kind of genuine challenges that investors have. You worry about risk on the one side, and you look for what are the opportunities for growth and investment on the other side. And climate change and improvement to the environment, that there is people are, I think, starting to really understand that both of these factors are going to be important. They both affect financial markets. They both affect capital, sort of investors. And I think that's why they're getting, so much more attention. So do you need to actually call it something special? Or actually, would it just be very sensible properly prudent investing to actually be already thinking about these issues about sustainability, the environment, etc. Yeah.
Do you think capital's more patient than it used to be?
Well, I mean, I think some capital was always patient, and some capital is not. Yeah, it's quite a tricky one, that. I think it's more to do with your perspective, your like the time horizons over which we're sort of engaging and thinking, and some of that is linked to our politics. Some of it's linked to sort of our sentiment and our knowledge. So I think, again, if you talk about net zero or the 2050 targets, it looks a way out, but it's not too far out, and we know how serious the consequences are going to be. But actually, it's also a length of time that people can actually sort of think about. I mean, it's relevant, 20 or 30 years to really make some huge changes or definitely see some significant consequences. That's in all of our lifetimes. It's certainly, in the lifetime of many of the, will be CEOs of some of our biggest companies in the next, sort of 5 or 10 years. It's all of our generation of new voters, the next workforce, etc. And I think all of that really kind of changes it up quite a lot, because it makes it really, really important that we all kind of try and do something about this challenge, and there'll be more weight behind that. So if you're an investor, you say, look, for the next 20 years, do I think that this is a passing phase? Or do I actually see that there's a 10, 15, 20, 30 year, whichever horizon I like to take, this is a direction of travel, and it doesn't look like it's going backwards or going to change materially, I hope. So you've got something to build a strategy around. If you're patient capital, you're looking at over those time horizons at least. If you're kind of shorter term capital, we might need that as well. We might need some people who are ready to put a bit more money at risk, help us kind of really get the R&D going in some of our technologies that we need to kind of really accelerate. So that there's a landscape and there's an ecosystem out there. I'm not saying that it's optimized, but right now we need to kind of use every part of that to maximize the impact. And I think actually more of these groups, patient capital can work increasingly with some of the less patient capital, and try and move that, move what it's looking at, because those solutions could well be solutions that we need for the future.
Yeah, I guess there's all sorts of different financial instruments as well available, and the role of government, hopefully, becoming more centered around clean tech R&D or sustainable R&D, not just R&D, just things that are cleaner, encouraging cleaner technologies. But then, I read about the Alphabet, Google's parent, issuing a $6 billion sustainability bond, which would have been oversubscribed 6 times, I think. So, there are big organisations out there starting to talk this and align their kind of goals with this, aren't there? Which is very encouraging.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And look, there's some that are, there'll be lots of pros and cons. There'll be lots of views and perspectives on a lot of what is happening. I think that the most important thing is we really need to see those headline numbers, and it's very easy to talk about lots of big numbers, sort of in that sense. It's when you actually start to, and your question, your point about data, and sort of seeing impact, because that's happening at the same time. Increasingly people say, well, it's great raising these huge amounts of money and great big numbers being sort of talked about, and I think it's very exciting. But what you will quickly start to ask is, where is that money going? What's it actually invested in? What's it delivering? And I think, I do see that there's sort of a quickly accelerating capability and appetite to sort of strengthen how we report, how we measure. Many people out there now trying to crack the sort of the data kind of how do you aggregate the data? How do you find consistent data? How do you consistently report? So, what I'm coming back to is my world of, I'm working investments now, but it's very much about how do you kind of mobilize that capital and actually help it to actually go and do things in the real world. And it sounds a sort of a bit generic thing to say, but that is way easier said than actually done.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess one thing would be really interesting to hear from your perspective. What are the really interesting technologies that are emerging in clean tech from your perspective? What are the things that are really exciting, you think, for the next 10, 20 years?
Yeah, oh gosh, I mean, where do you start? I would do a disservice to the many groups out there. This is what I find really, really exciting, and I'll speak from a UK perspective. Here is where I'm based, and over the last kind of 4 or 5 years, the long of companies and startups and founders and sort of spin outs of our universities, and actually people who have had an idea, taken it to literally to their garage, worked it out, and they're coming and they're trying to get these things mobilized. So that's absolutely fantastic, and I see many different technologies tackling all kinds of different problems. And again, I tend to think of it as, how do we decarbonize power? How are we going to decarbonize heat? And how are we going to, and cooling, I sort of heat and cooling together. And what do we do about transport? And then the other way I look at it, I sort of then build a bit of a cube and sort of say, I also need to think about all of those in terms of, broadly speaking, from an energy perspective. Where do we make it? How do we generate it? How do we sort of manage it? And then how do we kind of consume it as consumers? So this kind of gives you a bit of a picture through which you can then identify and find, are there any enabling or sort of game changer possibilities in the technologies across that whole space? I'm an investor, so it's a declared interest, but we have LNG. I'm speaking here personally, but LNG, we invested in a company called Oxford Photovoltaics. And what's so exciting about that is it's sort of saying, well, there's a lot of progress in the cost of solar. Now, 4 or 5 years ago, they were saying, well, we found a way that you could significantly improve its efficiency. So can you get a lot more power out of the same size panel? Let's be really simple about it, because that will make a huge difference. It will make a difference to the markets you can deploy it in. It will make it more economic in places where the sunlight isn't quite as strong, and where it'd be less economic in the past. Or it will make it more economic where you're space constrained, and you can get a more meaningful amount of power for the same kind of area of space that you're taking up. And so sometimes it's technologies like that that really excite me, because this is about really improving or stepping up what we already have and making it even better, and actually using it to its maximum effect. And we've seen it in wind, with the scaling up of the turbines. 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. But I remember having conversations of, we'll never be able to make a wind turbine more than half a megawatt, or a megawatt. That's about it. And now we've got 10 megawatts going out into the sea, and that's a relatively short time horizon. So there's some really exciting stuff. Some are like complete game changers, like fusion power. And there are a number of groups around the world looking at this. It's suffered from, it's always 50 years away, and where's the progress? But actually in the last sort of 5, 10, 15 years, again, that's benefited from some enabling technologies. So there's been huge progress with high temperature superconducting magnets, and that makes it much more possible to increase the efficiencies, increase the magnetic forces needed to contain a plasma, and actually that then goes on to facilitate more rapid progress towards achieving some fusion conditions. and doing it in a way that we could generate more power coming out than it currently takes to actually make the reaction happen. So yeah, bit of a mixture of there are some super exciting things out there, and there are some here and nows in solar and hydrogen and others where it's about taking something we know, making it better, reducing the cost, making it more efficient. But a lot more people's attention and a lot more capability, and actually more finance is already starting to focus on the area. And so it excites me a lot, and I think it's a really great time.
I'm really excited when it comes to the home more, when our homes are automatically kind of more renewable. The devices that we use, and I've said this before, I think probably on one of the previous discs recordings, is if we could find ways to kind of make this all more localized, more community based, and my waste is digested at my house to create my energy, or that fusion, that fusion kind of concept, which I think unfortunately was knocked back 20 years by Keanu Reeves in that film in the 90s called Chain Reaction, which was absolutely awful. If anyone wants to laugh, watch that one. But I think there's loads of kind of just what you can imagine happening is that, isn't it? It is, I think, a lot more happening, a lot more kind of localized power generation, storage, use. Things like the Green Grant Scheme coming through from the government, encouraging people to deploy again. That should be done regardless, right? So more incentives for those types of things. I think it's really exciting from a tech perspective. What's coming? You must have loads of things you're looking at the moment.
Yeah, and the home space, completely agree. So in sort of heat and buildings, that's an absolute core focus for me. And as you said, that there are many technologies. I think there's one of the risks that comes about quite quickly is not putting the consumer absolutely first in all of this, and also sort of making sure that for different countries or different systems, we need to make sure that we keep zooming out and think about what's the whole system benefit, and actually what's the whole system impact on all individuals, and so it'll be fantastic. It's great if you can put a solar panel on your roof, but because you've got the perfect roof with a great aspect and you can afford to put a solar panel on it, what does that, any assumption in the past that you therefore sell the power to the grid and you can make a bit of a return on your panel, it's sort of saying, well, who are the people who don't have that option? Are they therefore buying your power? And we need to think quite carefully about some of the wider ramifications, because I totally agree with you. It's a combination of these things is possible. It's going to be great. It's going to help us decarbonize, but it's trying to keep stepping back and saying, but is it the right solution? What are the unforeseen sort of consequences, particularly for individual people? But yeah, that's it. It's another whole complex area to think about. You can't always answer it, but at least try and be cognizant of it.
Yeah, agree. And I think that with the times we live in, that there's that line between work and home and consumer and business that we're exploring still, right? From a sustainability data, or just how we operate, but also data and performance basis that we're still learning about. So interesting times if this is our reality for another 6-12 months, isn't it? And what comes through it. But I think that, John, there's loads of other things I can ask you, but I think we're not got as much time as I'd like, unfortunately. So I think what I'd like to do now is just get into the important part, really, and talk about your music taste. And I'll say before we started, I listened to it twice in a row. So there's a couple that are just going to be in your heads for the rest of the day. And I'll admit to the one when it comes round that's most embarrassing, but I'll cover that later. It's not an embarrassing choice, it's just embarrassing from my perspective. But the first of the 7 is classic U2 and 1. So yeah. Where does that come from? Where does the love of U2 come from?
I think as a sort of just turning into my teenage years, Achtung Baby was the first. It was pretty much the first time I'd seen a CD player. and we had one in the house. And yeah, giving away age there. The black and white television had just gone out. And actually, the honest truth is, every day I'd get paid a bit of pocket money to load the coal buckets to fill up the Arga for our heating. Hot water. You know, talk about being at the coal face of climate change as a teenager. So Actung Baby, first album, first CD I had, and you know, one, the lyrics, I mean, they speak for themselves. I loved it. Really resonates with me. It makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck now when I hear that song. I think about all of the different meanings that has for our society and as people. And you know, that album, I had it at a time where, and I've only recently learned this, that they recorded it in Berlin, but it was around the time, you know, it was after the Berlin Wall had fallen. You know, so again, a great sort of exciting time of reunification, you know, a wonderful human story, and just around the time and just before the first Rio Earth Summit. So, you know, you could I sort of think, you know, maybe that was the first time something got planted in me, and it still does with that song. It means everything. You know, it means things to people, our relationship with nature and the world. So yeah, and I do like the. I've got quite eclectic taste, as you can tell. So I like a bit of you too.
Oh, he doesn't. He can't. That song is so well put together and composed. It's just so catchy. And the next one, talk about catchy. Prince, Purple Rain. Yeah. So that's a belter, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, what can I say? That's in there because he was, you know, one of the most talented musicians and songwriters ever, in my view. And yeah, I mean, I think sort of, you know, look, let's be honest, that's kind of my moody mid-teens, late teens. Again, yeah, it's just a beautiful track. I can never get bored of listening to it. If somebody, you know, mentions it, I'll want to turn it on and listen to it. And you know, again, it's so sad that you don't realise a lot of things until they're gone. And it was actually not. I hadn't fully really appreciated just how prolific Prince had been until, you know, he passed. And I've watched a couple of documentaries, you know, where the executors to the estate are, you know, they're busy working through the. You know, I think it's something crazy like he's written enough for. I'll get this wrong. It's something like an album a day, every day for the next 20 years. There's enough stuff in his vault, which is incredible, and you know, and died sort of relatively young. So you sort of think, look what you can do in a lifetime or in half a lifetime. It's inspiring, amazing.
Absolutely. And then the next one, as a child of the 90s, was it Oasis or was it Blur? Which one was it? It was Oasis. Supersonic by Oasis for you. So yeah, did you like Blur as well? Or did you just
I didn't mind them, actually.
Yeah,
I wasn't too exercised by the whole sort of, you know, one band versus the other. It didn't worry me too much, but I did much more prefer. You know, I just preferred the Oasis sound, and you know, Supersonic. There's something. There's a couple of things. One is I don't think the lyrics really mean anything. I'm pretty confident it was written under the influence of something.
Tonic.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I really love about it, it's just absolutely raw. You know, there's no. It's some very talented people. You know, put together a song in 5 or 10 minutes. They've turned it into an amazing sound. The lyrics, whether they mean anything or do they have to mean anything, and then it's just kind of out there. It's kind of just let it all out, put it on the table. Yeah, it's full of energy, and the lads that I play hockey with will remember it forever because yeah, they regularly ask me to sort of stand up and do my karaoke cover of it at hockey.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's for the next. That's for our live session. Now we know that.
It normally empties the place.
Hey, what's the story of Morning Glory? I remember when it came out, I couldn't stop listening to it. But you're right, you know, if you get older and I mean, maybe if you it's like musical snobbery, it isn't. You know, the lyrics aren't much, but it doesn't matter. It's just so the songs are so good, it's so catchy. You know, Slide Away, I love. I don't know. I just love that album. I can't forget all of them, and some of them are really bonkers as well, aren't they? Like Champagne Supernova, and it's just. And Wonderwall's probably my least favourite, but you know that was the huge one, wasn't it, at the time? So,
I woke up a few people in our block because I used to have a job when I was at university. I had a job to earn a bit of money down at Halfords in town, so I popped off down to Halfords one morning. And I came back, and the guys had to pull the fuse box out of the block. I said, what's going on? And they said your kind of CD player alarm thing went off, and it had this setting where for every couple of minutes I didn't press stop, it just ratcheted the volume up. And so I'd gone off to Halfords forgetting I'd left this thing on, and they had some Wonderwall, top volume at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning or something.
You're showing how posh you are here, John, because a CD player in your car in the mid-90s.
I'm not in the car. No. This was in my university bedroom. So I'd left the bedroom, gone off down to Halfords to do my job, and all of the other, students, colleagues who were in the hall, the next door, all the guys next door and everything else. It was blasting the music out, and I got them all out of bed it was on a Sunday. So I came back and found they'd had to pull the fuse out of the wall. But anyway, I wasn't popular.
No, that's brilliant. And the next song, I absolutely love him, Elton John. And I wouldn't have picked Border Song, but tell me why Border Song. But I love Border Song, but there's others.
Yeah, look, absolutely love Elton as well. There's a couple of things about this song. I was on holiday, I think it was last year. It was last year. It was his sort of farewell. He was on his farewell world tour, and we've been on holiday a couple of times to Tuscany, and we went up to Lucca, and we were so fortunate to get tickets to see his concert, one of his farewell concerts in Lucca. It was wonderful. It was an amazing evening. I really enjoyed it. And amazing that at that age, he could perform in that way, and incredible. Anyway, he played he played Border Song. It kind of brought tears to my eyes, and I remembered it. It really brought it back into my memory. And the first memory I have of listening to that song was actually when I was working in Mississippi, at that department, looking at the riverbanks, and because obviously when I was living there for sort of 3 or 4 months, I became sort of very interested and kind of concerned and passionate about the inequality there, the inequality that has been left as the legacy from times where there was a different time in the southern states. And there's huge meaning for me in that song, and it brought it back recently. I think it's a song of our time today, particularly.
It's a beautiful song. Have you seen Rocket Man, the movie?
Yes, I have. Yes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. See, it's my favourite Elton song is Your Song, and I think probably it became even more my favourite song when they showed how he composed it in that film. Whether that's true or not, I don't care. That kind of to me, that's how I believe from now on is what happens. But if you haven't seen that film, it's absolutely amazing, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah, it's talented.
So good.
Yeah.
All approving so far. And now the next one. So this is the one I was talking about. So when you say Nothing at All, and you've chosen Alison Krauss, is that the original version of it? Because Ronan Keating did it for. This is why I love it. I love this song. It's in Notting Hill, and it's one of my guilty pleasure songs. It's like Ronan Keating sings it in that film, and I absolutely love that song. But I didn't know that version.
So I think it was the first aunt's wedding music from my wife. So really meaningful track. Ronan Keating, I think, did it after Alison Krauss, but Alison Krauss and Union Station have definitely taken it off, and I don't know the original recording. So it was a bit of a slight compromise for me between, I really love some of, what, Alison Krauss recorded this great album with Robert Plant, not too long ago. And some of that kind of, I enjoy some of that, the difference of that sort of country music, so bluegrass, it's a bit different. I like some of that music sound, and texture, and so when I heard that her singing, When You Say Nothing at All, I've put the two together, and I've got a 2 for 1 basically in your 7 choices.
It's good. It's a good one. And the next one's an epic one. Now, is this because of the film, or is this independently of the film that you like it?
No, independently of the film that I like it.
Okay.
Not independently of the film that I came across it.
Okay.
First heard in the film, but absolutely I just love the sound. I love it's sort of a different language. Again, it's the artist, it's sounds that are made, apparently, you make the recording there and then, because it's always changing, always being created. So I love that sort of, to create something as beautiful as that. But this is a sort of a pretty unique and not so prescribed, written down specific words. I think it's just incredible, absolutely incredible.
And the song's called "Now We Are Free" by Lisa Gerrard. It's in Gladiator. I'm just trying to remember which part of Gladiator that it's in. Is it? Oh, maybe we don't do spoilers in case and people haven't seen Gladiator, I suppose. There's probably not that many people that haven't seen Gladiator. If you haven't, go see it right now. Stop work and go and watch Gladiator immediately. Like, everyone will understand.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure I'd pinpoint it accurately, because, as I said, I think it's been a while since I've seen the film. But I hear the music more regularly, that way, especially that piece. It's incredible.
It is lovely. And then the last one is the one that I wasn't sure which version of it was. I'd not come across it before. Liebstraum by Franz Liszt, and I probably pronounced his name wrong. I off the top of my head, I guessed that it was probably number 3 in A flat major symphony 541, number 3. Is that right? It's quite well remembered. It's not written down here or anything. But yeah, which I didn't know which one it was. But tell us about that piece, because that's kind of a bit different, I think.
Just again, really I've always really enjoyed classical music as well. I love opera. Sort of got a real thing about Puccini and some of his music. So it's just, I think what I wanted to capture, if I had sort of seven sort of tracks or songs to do this, was to sort of capture something really special to me, that I really enjoy the sound of, in the different genres that I love. And I couldn't, the thing that's missing in all of this is jazz, which I couldn't find a way of easily popping that in. So yeah, it's a beautiful classical piece. It's a piano piece. I actually really enjoy listening to my wife. She's really good pianist, and we've got a really nice piano, so we're very, very lucky to have that. And I can't play a single note, so I think it's something where I would love to. I could imagine, and I would love to have spent or have an extra lifetime to spend learning how to play that piece of music, and play it for anybody, because it's a very beautiful piece, and it's very much about love, and it's got a beautiful, compassionate feel to it. It's love, and it's got dreams in it, and it's fantastic. Yeah, that's
what I read about it. It was about, there's a lot of admiration for it, that people saying, God, I wish I could play this piece of music. Because it is quite incredible piece of music, isn't it, when you listen to it and you hear it all the way through. I'm the same as you. I've always wished I could have learned to play the piano, and I'm told it's not too late. So try to figure out a way to.
I'm having a go. I'll confess, I'm having a go. But
are you?
Don't come back and ask how it's progressing.
Well, I think you've got to do your live rendition of Supersonic whilst playing the piano. and the next version of this. that's the key. So you said you couldn't fit jazz in. You could you choose a gadget now. You can choose a jazz flute, maybe.
Yeah. Do you know, I hadn't thought of that.
Ron Burgundy style. So what gadget would you take then if the world was on the edge?
Yeah, I think you were saying that the world's on the edge, and we might be we might be being a little bit hunter gatherer, and sort of things getting pretty tough for our local community, not just as individuals but sort of as a community. So I'm cheating a bit and taking a solar panel, a high efficiency one, of course.
Of course.
Just think it'd be pretty useful. We could use it to sort of help pump some water where we don't have any, and which is going to likely be a problem. But also for light and communication, pretty much anything that you need electricity, and you need sort of in situ wherever you go for lots of different reasons. I thought that would be a pretty useful gadget to have around.
And the irony is it could power up your iPod to listen to millions of songs as well. So you wouldn't have to choose to 7.
Well, of course.
Apart from the whole iTunes system will be down, but never mind. But there'll be another way. I have to listen to vinyl again. That's what it'll be. And then the box set. So this is a big one. This is a long one if you settled in to do this as well. So what have you chosen for your box set?
So the box set is the Lord of the Rings, and the film versions, because I'll say I don't have sufficient time, but that's not quite true. I haven't managed to apply myself to read through all of the books. Look, I think I love the story. I think it has so much packed into it. I think there's some great sort of uplifting moments, particularly sort of from some of your darkest hour. It's got great connections with the world and the way we live and the environment and how we think about it and how we treat it. So it brings together a whole range of sort of different aspects, if you like, about humanity, society, how we run up, how we manage our world, how we treat each other, and then how we treat the planet. And but all the way through that, there's sort of despair, and then there's always hope. And I think in the situation that we're going to be in this desertification scenario, it'll be. I think that'll be something I enjoy watching, and I think it'd be quite fulfilling for a bit of viewing on an evening when I need to relax, if it's possible. Absolutely.
It's a struggle. It's going to be a struggle. We need a Frodo, that's for sure, and a Sam. He's the main. Sam's the main one, isn't he? Let's face it. It's all about Sam. So just to finish off, so it's kind of 3 questions just to take us home. One thing I kind of get that I laugh at it, but it also makes me despair at times is greenwash. And I'm just wondering, what have there been any good examples of greenwash that you've seen recently, or that you've exposed, or anything that kind of comes to mind? It could be recently, it could be ever. Is there anything you'd like to share kind of on the greenwash side of things?
Without, I just think personally,
naming names.
Personally, I just had to get on Google pretty quickly to work out exactly what Donald Trump meant when he was talking about clean coal.
Oh yeah.
I was kind of immediately into the camp, straight up, in a split second. All of the options went through my mind, and I love this link back to sort of being a kid when I used to fill a coal bucket. So I used to think, I remember having to kind of really scrub my hands every time I filled a coal bucket. So I think clean coal is possibly a pretty big example.
I like that one. And so what tips would you give an individual on who wants to kind of live more sustainably? What would you
I think something that possibly the recent lockdown, and I don't know if you're time stamping these dispatches, but we're in 2020 and we've had a terrible sort of pandemic, and I think what it made people quickly realise as the time went by was just how little, there's a lot of stuff we actually really don't need. And we'd actually been busy filling our days and our sort of aspirations and our sort of frustrations, chasing after a whole load of material things, which fundamentally, when it came down to it, good food, a good meal with our family, a safe place to live, our health and well-being, these and some green natural space, some of these real fundamentals, I think they've just been sort of put back at the front of the agenda a little bit, and we've been reminded. And I think coming out of that, I'm thinking, gosh, I could be so much more, I could use so much less. So, without even changing what I do and my lifestyle, I could do a bit less of all of it. I could moderate a lot of the things that I've been doing, and I could dial up some things that I sort of think I'll do that because I know it'll help a bit, but I'm not washing every carton. I'm kind of dumping it in the recycling and assuming a machine will take care of it. But maybe I need to pay my attention a bit more back to some of those things and dial them up, and I need to moderate because I could moderate so much more on my consumption, and think a bit more about what I'm eating and how much of it, etc. So there's lots of really as individuals, practical, personal ways. And a lot of these things are they can be pretty fulfilling actually, individually. So, don't worry so much, or don't need to keep being challenged or make a connection on, what difference can I make in this world? Because, thank goodness, Franz Liszt and the many other people just do it, or Prince or anybody else. What a massive difference they've made on my world, and they might have not done that, and that's there you go. So I think just moderation. Sorry, actually, just one last quick thing. I talked about it earlier. You can bring your passion and purpose and concern. Today, I think you've got the opportunity, or the growing opportunity, to bring that into every workplace and every role in some way, shape or form. And for some, it will be a more active can do something. For others, it might just be a little bit of a kind of a nudge and a what if and a maybe, wherever you feel you're at in we're all in different situations and circumstances. And some of us are in the needs must position. But for others, we can, whether it's saying something, asking for something, or actually actively sort of pushing for something or making something happen, possibly we can do something there as well. But so there you go.
I think that's a perfect dovetail into what would have been a third question about the business. How would a business look at this? And I think you're absolutely right. I think as we've got to think of ourselves in that context now, and businesses have got to think about put our people and our employees first as well, rather than often forgetting them after the shareholders. So I think that's wise words. And I think first, thanks so much, John, for doing this session with us today. And the reason we do these recordings is we want to share knowledge and we want to share experience with people. And there's various ways we can do that. But just listening and learning from people that have done this for a few years is an excellent way to do that. And just to show that we're all humans as well, before the machines take over. But look, thank you so much for taking time today. So John's selections are going to be available on Apple Music and Spotify through the links that you'll see below on the newsletter. So enjoy those as much as you like to, forever. And thanks very much for John. We'll check out now, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks for episode 5. Thanks, John. Thanks again.
Yeah, no, thank you. Really appreciate it, and great to speak to you.
Cheers. Bye.